Hello everyone. Today I'd like to very quickly discuss the idea which I've just gotten up on my screen to remind me a few notes. We're going to talk about camera angles and editing in regards to question 1. In what ways does your media product use, develop or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? Now, in answering this question we have to consider our research stage and where we decided to get all these different influences from for our ultimate pop video. So going back to, for example, Wonderwall and the way in which that video is shot. Now in our original research bit we discovered that many long shots are used interchangeably with quite a few close-ups in order to create a sense of discontinuity and a sense of confusion for the audience and in terms of the internal narrative. We decided in our pop video to borrow that element. So for example, when you get the long shots of the band and the kind of panning wide shots, you get a very deep sense of isolation. Yet at the same time, when you get shots later on that are of my face, an extreme close-up, or as I'm walking towards the camera with the jump cuts, so it's cutting in me closer then backwards then closer with the thought beats, you get a kind of dichotomy between isolationism yet internal emotional expression. This person, the idea of sulking, is almost making the individual more confused himself. He wants to express all this emotion, he wants to tell the world he's scared, he's lonely, he can't stand the idea of his partner sulking constantly. And whereas that's the emotional level of the entire depiction, the wide shots, the distant shots are more of a direct literal representation of isolationism. Another example of camera angles are the ways in which we have top-down shots over the band in the hall. Now this kind of fits in with the previous point as well, but this idea of a small fish in a large sea, small individuals that are literally tiny in terms of the wider frame of the view. Now we borrowed that from videos such as Kirsty MacColl's in New England, in which you see her walking towards the camera, and this was part of our research stage as well. But from a massive distance she's tiny and her emotions are being squashed by her surroundings, the brutalist surroundings of the buildings. And to us it was a very similar thing. I mean, we didn't have brutalist buildings to help us with that, but we had the bland nature of the hall against tiny figures of us in the distance, and our emotions were being expressed to a room full of nobody. So this internal battle of internal emotions and wanting to express these emotions versus the people that are actually there and listening, and there isn't anyone, creates a very interesting battle. That we used influences like that. Also in the research stage we looked at videos such as R.E.M's Losing My Religion. Now within that video you get a very clear sense of almost painting-like imagery on the screen. We looked at Caravaggio as being a primary influence on that video in terms of the quite biblical and religious symbolism. Now whereas our video wasn't going for a kind of religious angle, we were looking at paintings that would somehow provide a little bit of inspiration for this idea of sulking and lost emotion. So, for example, in the scene where the girl pushes me against one wall and then turns me around and pushes me against another, and you've got this really nice kind of archway, was influenced by films actually such as The Searchers, in which at the end of that film John Wayne leans up against a very, very thin door frame, and you can see outside this vast open plain, and the inside is totally pitch black. And that was the idea we were going for. There's hope out there. There is light at the end of this very thin kind of crack. and within that we wanted the position of the characters to be halfway in between, just as the idea of sulking is kind of a halfway between happiness and sadness. It's kind of a middle point. Now I'm just going to bring up the notes again so I can talk about the other aspect, because I've forgotten it. But just give me 1 second. I mean, I find the entire thing interesting, very interesting indeed. So editing, which is actually a much easier thing to talk about in a sense, because editing is a natural part of any music video, and we knew that editing had to be more influenced based than it could be created, because theorists such as Andrew Goodwin and Steve Archer kind of have provided the theories that act as the basis for many music videos that are produced in the modern age. And we knew that we couldn't be too unconventional and too artsy-fartsy. We had to do what we had to do, and that was always going to be our basis, as it was for many other members of different groups in our particular class. So, for instance, the thought beats I mentioned earlier, the cutting as I'm walking towards the camera, but it's kind of not really synchronous. It's not based on continuity. There is one shot where it does just go click, 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 and as I'm coming forward. But during the original tunnel sequence, I go forward, then I go backwards again, also signifying this kind of ambiguity and this unknown. There isn't a straight answer to the question of what should I do that my partner is sulking. Where do I go? What's the way out of this? And we took influence from there, from actually a lot more modern videos. So Adele's Hello, for example, is cut very, very sporadically. It's not cut in a very straightforward way. Her emotive expressions don't really appear synergist to the music or the lyrics. It's kind of cutting between the two, and it's very, very unconventional. Another video that is similar to that, it's a video I hate, but it uses all these different tropes and conventions, and that's just give me a second, I'll get the name. It's a Blurred Lines by Robin Thicke and Pharrell Williams. I think that's how I pronounced them. But the entire video is one single shot, which is something we didn't want to do because we knew it would, one, lose marks, but two, it wouldn't provide any interesting visuals for the audience to really latch onto. But the idea of breaking continuity is played throughout that entire sequence, in which 1 minute they're standing in one position and the next minute it's a totally different position. And then the shots themselves don't appear particularly... they don't really have any continuity to them. Sometimes they've zoomed in a bit, it's a close-up, then sometimes it's out. There's no rhythmic pattern to them, there's no poetry. I know in a friend's video, for example, the way he's positioned it is quite symmetrical. So at the start of the video you get a certain angle, and at the end of the video you get the same angle but slightly different. Now that's fine for a very closed narrative type of video, but for ours we wanted it to feel uncomfortable, wanted it to feel detached, and the whole purpose of not having shots like that and not being quite so straightforward is to create a sense of detachment, so the audience would understand the emotional turmoil of this individual. Now, one sequence of shots that, when I originally edited them, I wasn't quite proud of because I thought it didn't work, but in retrospect I do, is a sequence where I'm walking down a street and it cuts very, very abruptly. And at first I thought it was too abrupt, but looking back at it now, it's the type of shot where it feels tacked on, but I think it works because it is tacked on. Take other videos such as Bruce Springsteen's I'm on Fire, in which it doesn't have much of this, but in certain shots, such as when the car is driving around the corner, it jumps very, very slightly, and it feels as if it's been chopped very quickly, and we wanted that whole theme for ours. The whole codes and conventions associated with that we wanted to try and bring into our video. So yeah, basically that's a bit of an insight into how camera angles and editing influenced us, particularly the codes and conventions of camera angles and editing influenced our decisions. And if you go back to all the research posts, and hopefully we'll link a few on this blog post, you can see there is a definite this pattern of taking influences from these different videos into our ultimate main video, main task. And I think it works quite effectively, but that's a question for another time, how effective it is. So I'll leave that here. But yeah, so that's hopefully a basic insight, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you very much. This is Oliver James Cook, signing out.